What's going on? Happy Halloween, or whenever the hell you're watching this. We are live in New York City on the corner of 4th and Broadway. I'm Kevin Kenny. This is the Build Series, and we're about to be joined on stage by a gentleman who sold millions of records around the world. Some of his songs probably have soundtracked some of your fondest memories in your personal life, and returns to this stage today as a curator and co-founder of the upcoming Underwater Sunshine Festival at Rockwood Music Hall. Please let's give a warm welcome to Adam Duritz.
Hello.
I usually say welcome, but welcome back, Adam. You've been in this building quite a few times.
Yeah, I think it keeps changing. You've had it for a while now.
Should give you the key.
Yeah, well, why not at this point?
Well, welcome back. But you've actually been on this show before, but in a different capacity. You talked about tours, you talked about albums, but this is actually pretty neat because this event to our side right here, the Underwater Sunshine Fest, of course, bears the same name to one of your past albums, but also is a really unique event as far as festivals go. It's taking place at Rockwood Music Hall here, November 8th, and is it
8th and 9th?
8th and 9th. It's a 2-day event, and it's just I'll kick it to you, and you can tell us about it. But it's really great, really the core of what this is all founded on.
Well, we had been doing, a lot of us, my friends and I, had been working on a festival called the Outlaw Roadshow for years, and when that sort of split up, after about a year, we were all talking and decided we were all at a friend's wedding, and we decided we really wanted to do it again. And I had already started the Underwater Sunshine podcast at that point, and they just sort of had a talk amongst themselves and told me they wanted to call it the same thing, because it's sort of the same idea. You know, he's trying to sort of shed light on things people don't often see. You know, a lot of unknown bands on the podcast and in the festival.
And I just think at the root of it is community. And is that something that has been a throughway? I mean, you've had such an amazing career, but even going back to early days in Northern California, was it the community that really attracted you to music? Well,
I think when you're starting out and playing the clubs, you have this built-in peer group of all these other bands and people who are doing that. And then, you know, when you get successful like we did, that sort of evaporates unless you want to hang out at the MTV Awards or the Grammys, which wasn't really my bag. You started losing that sort of sense of friendship and group of people who understand what you do because they do the same thing. But the festivals really brought that back for me. You know, getting to know a lot of musicians during the Outlaw Roadshow and now during Underwater Sunshine. I mean, I have a huge friend set of people who, you know, may be at different levels of success than me, but we do exactly the same thing. You know?
Right.
So we understand each other that way.
That shared language almost.
Yeah.
Yeah. When you talk to a younger act, like we were fortunate enough to watch a music video from Scout, which is a great local band, do they talk about the loss of a scene, quote unquote? I mean, when you were coming up, you had to play the clubs, not necessarily the same ball game nowadays because of, you know, the things like the internet and streaming and whatnot. Do they talk at all to you or confide in you about the lack of a scene?
No, but I think everyone's sort of trying to figure out how to, including us, how to survive and have a life in music nowadays. It's a lot harder. People simply don't pay for it.
Right.
And that can be really rough. It's hard to get people to come out to see a gig. I mean, that's one of the reasons we've always made the festival free. Because if you want to, you know, expose people to music, you really need to make it as easy as possible for them. Because nobody is breaking their back to get out to a club to see bands they've never heard of. You know, so we do. Every week we put out an essay and a whole web page about one of the bands with their music, with videos, and we make it free when you get there. We buy merch from all the bands. We don't pay the bands, but we do buy merch from every band, and then we give that away free to the fans at the club. Anything we can do to sort of expose people to this music.
And I think another thing, at least from what I've read about it, it seems at the core of this is unique and differentiated experiences, right? Like you want people to go to this, and whatever they take from it, they take from it. It doesn't have to be the same shared takeaway or experience.
Well, I mean, at this one, there'll be 30 bands basically playing, I think is the number we ended up with. So that's a lot of different experiences you can have. It's going to be different from because other than me, I don't think anybody's going to make it to every set. You know, like I try and be there for at least the first half of every set. Because they overlap, so you have to leave to get to the next one. But you know, nobody else gets to every set. It's impossible, pretty much. It's exhausting.
Yeah.
So they're all going to have different kinds of experiences, and people come in liking different kinds of music, and there are a lot of different kinds of music. And then we have the garden sessions, which that's actually from a garden session. The shows are Friday and Saturday at night, but Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday we film all day at my house, as many different bands as we can. We had 18 bands at the last festival, but we filmed 44 bands at the garden sessions. That was where we saw Scout for the first time. Really? My friend had brought them to play, and I was floored, really, by that song. It was the first thing they played, and I asked them to play the festival right after that.
This fascination, or maybe this focus you've always had throughout your career of shining light on bands that don't get the attention that maybe a band like you who had the mainstream success. Why is that so important to you?
I just like music. I think
Right.
I've always been kind of a music geek. But musicians are different. When I lived in LA, my friends were always telling me what sucked, what movies sucked, what actors sucked, which is funny, but not a great way to find a movie you want to see. Right. But musicians just want to shove down your throat the latest thing they listen to. We're always doing that to each other. We're annoying that way. And I feel like it's what I would be doing anyways. I would be sitting around with music trying to turn my friends onto it. So this way it's a little larger audience.
I mean, is there, I don't want to say guilt. Guilt would be the wrong word, but is there almost a responsibility that you felt coming up out of the clubs and then achieving this massive success, that started in 1993 and, of course, has carried you today? Is there a responsibility to now pay it back to some people that maybe, because I've heard you speak in the past about, the success of those early records, and you seem almost oblivious as to the exact reason why they were so successful, because you felt like you were making great records and you felt like that, the 1993 record was a great record, but it just connected differently.
Well, I mean, I am oblivious as to why. I think they're great records, all of them. But some of them have been more successful than others. The most successful is not necessarily my favorite.
Yeah.
And I have lots of friends who make great records too that aren't successful like that. And there's crap out there that is. But I mean, I don't think any of us really know why people attach to something. I'm just, I got lucky, and not lucky, we were good, but I'm really glad we had the experience we had with it. It would be more fun if, we could get people turned on to our friends too, then we could all tour together.
How much is it how great the record is, and how much is it when, now looking back, I've talked like Billy Corgan about this, like the cultural zeitgeist just sort of turning its proverbial head and just focusing on your scene or focusing on your sound. Do you think it's a little bit of both?
Wait, what are the two? I missed it.
Well, in the sense of like, no, because you make a great point. You were making great records your entire career, and not just with the Crows, but before the Crows too. And then in 1993, you guys just, with Mr. Jones and that record, it blows up out, around the world. How much of it do you think as an artist is the record being great, but also just pop culture coming to you guys too?
Oh, I think it's entirely the latter. I think, we made a great record, and we didn't screw up. I will say this, that when we got opportunities, we showed up for them. We get to play Saturday Night Live, we played really well. Same thing on Letterman. We didn't screw up those moments, but, the world just went crazy for us for a period of time.
Yeah.
We've been coasting off that forever. I still think we do great work, but, none of it is as successful as that first thing was. So I don't think for me, it's not decreasing quality. I just think it's decreasing focus, and people are less interested because at that one moment in their lives, everybody liked Counting Crows.
But that's profound in and of itself, right? Because I think a lot of artists, they'll get that moment that you guys got, and then they'll chase that their entire career, and they'll say, well, wait, we sold a little bit less units this time. We sold a little bit less. Maybe the tour didn't sell. Maybe we're doing a bit smaller venues. We're not doing arenas. We're doing amphitheaters now over the years, and they'll internalize that as commentary on the art. But it's really not, right? At the end of the day, it's just this is how culture works.
I think it just happens sometimes. I don't think there's any explanation for it. I do think you can chase that. I mean, it was certainly what was expected of us after the first album was to make After August and Everything After,
Right. But don't you feel like chasing it is a fool's errand to a certain extent?
I'm sure it works for some people. I'm sure it works really well for some people. It didn't seem like a very good idea to me. But more importantly, I just wasn't interested in it. And I had things I was really interested in. We really wanted to go make a record with Gil Norton. He did all his Pixies records that I loved. He did The Laws. I wanted to, no, he didn't. Steve Lillywhite did, sorry. But I really wanted to go work with him and make a record, and I thought it would be really cool, and I knew what it would sound like. And that ended up being Recovering Satellites, and I couldn't be any happier with that.
Right.
But certainly the label and other people really wanted us to go repeat the first thing. I don't know whether that would have been possible or not, but it didn't seem very interesting to me.
I mean, was there ever a point where you had all that attention and the label having all of the opinions that they do, that you something made it out that you really weren't proud of, that you felt like was not your call artistically?
I don't think we ever really put anything out that was. I think there were misconceptions about things. We spent a weekend when we were making Hard Candy doing a lot of B-sides, just cover songs, just for fun. And we had this kind of cool hip hop sort of acoustic B-side of Big Yellow Taxi, which I really loved. And then people came to us and they wanted to do remixes of it. And I thought that was really cool. I like the idea of having someone from the hip hop or the soul or the funk world come in and do that. And, you know, that got made and I really liked it. It was fun and we put it as a hidden track on the record. But when it became a big hit, sort of out of the blue, I think there was a lot of sort of sense that that was what we were trying to do. We were trying to put out this, you know, song that didn't sound very much like us because it actually wasn't our version. It was the remix, you know, of a cover song, and that we were trying to have success with that. And for us, it was just kind of a lark that ended up, you know, like you don't know what's going to become a hit. Yeah. No one thought Mr. Jones was a hit. We were completely flabbergasted that Big Yellow Taxi ended up being a hit. And I'm happy it did. Yeah. I mean, I loved it, but I mean, it wasn't what I would have called the main thrust of that record. You know, it wasn't what we were going for on the record. It was this fun thing we did on the side. But then that's what people think of when they think of that record, maybe, because it was a huge hit. And
isn't that interesting? The identity that your own band has to you can be different than the identity that it has for the public.
Well, yeah, because the public sees what's thrown out in front of it, and at that point, when that's attached to a movie, that song, I think it was 2 weeks' notice. You know, so it gets a whole other audience, and it ends up turning into the single off the record, even though it wasn't the single off the record. There were a couple singles released before that, but somehow it becomes a single, and that's like, suddenly there's a sort of sense in the media that that's what we were trying to do with that record, was sort of get a hit by making a cover and putting it in a movie.
Right.
And, you know, I think that I don't have any problems with anything we ever released. It only came out because I loved it, including that song. But I do think sometimes you get misinterpretations of what you're trying to do. But everyone's trying to interpret things, trying to see who's selling out, who's screwing. You know, there's the sense that artists are the scammers pulling the wool over the public's eyes. And, you know, we're always in the, you know, media looking for who's doing that. You know, because, you know, we don't want to get ripped off either as fans.
Yeah.
We don't want the acts we love to suddenly turn to shit. You know.
Well, I think, and you probably just touched on maybe the greatest accomplishment that you have had as an artist is that you've never had that scam moment. You've never had that sellout moment over the past 25 or some odd years. How much of that do you attribute to breaking a bit later traditionally, right? You guys were in your late 20s coming out of Berkeley when you guys really broke, and you probably already knew exactly who you were. A lot of artists, they break young, they may not. They listen to other people.
Well, I mean, we did things that certainly could be considered selling out. We did a Coke commercial. You know, that was a time in our life on that same record where, you know, we didn't fit in any genres, and radio was very genre specific right then, and nobody was really lining up to play American Girls on the radio. Coke comes along and says, we love this song and we'll put it on TV all summer leading up to the release of the record while you're on tour. That was exposure no one else is going to give us. You know, this is a business. We're trying to, like, survive. You know, at that point we were, I don't know, what, 10 years in almost? You know, it's a long time to last as a band. It's pretty unlikely to go any further. Just trying to do things to stay alive, you know, and that could be certainly considered selling out. But for us, it was just like, we're trying to keep working. And
right.
we make a record, we like it, we want people to hear it. Radio's not interested. Television commercial seems like a good way, you know.
Yeah.
I kind of wish I'd done more of those things. And they used to pay a lot for it. And then they realized that your television commercial was just a way of exposing the bands, and they stopped paying. Yeah. There was a lot of money out there at one point for giving Mr. Jones to a Coke commercial. I sort of regret not doing that.
You talk about radio being so genre specific, and it's probably something that a lot of these younger bands that'll be on the festival probably can't even fathom today, because it's not necessarily the platform for music discovery in today's climate. What broke, say, a Mr. Jones back in the day? Was it the music video? Was MTV showing you love maybe before terrestrial radio did? Or do you remember kind of a moment where this is what kicked it off?
Well, I don't think Mr. Jones is really what broke. I guess it was a hit on the radio, but the record wasn't even in the top 200. We played Saturday Night Live and played around here. And the record jumped 40 spots a week for 6 weeks.
So you point to that. That's interesting.
Absolutely, because we played Saturday Night Live. I don't know why they had us play. We were out of the top 200. The record wasn't even charting. You know, it jumped 40 spots a week.
Wow.
For 5 or 6 weeks and landed us at number 2 eventually.
Something I was struck by, because I was watching your old Build, or not old, but last year you were on Build, and you were talking about how the favorite record to play live a lot of the times nowadays is This Desert Life. And wasn't that the record, though, that you guys actually went in and you didn't want to think about live when you recorded it? Isn't that the record where you went in and you just wanted to not give thought to?
Yeah, we were really playing studio games on that record. We were trying to like make the quirkiest, weirdest record, you know, really to do things that we could only do in a studio. But I think that's why. It's such an interesting record musically that it's really interesting to play. Songs have weird constructions, they have strange bridges, and you know, they're very arranged in cool ways. I think that's what keeps that record so fresh for all of us.
Yeah.
It is really the one that we love playing songs off of the most. You know, as far as like what's lasted all this time, I'd say Somewhere Under Wonderland, the latest record, is probably what people really love to play, but that's because it's the newest one.
Right.
I mean, I love that record. I think it's one of our best.
I heard you.
But Desert Life, yeah, it just sticks and sticks with all of us.
Yeah. It's fantastic. You also at this festival are linking up with. There are so many new artists we're going to get turned on to, but then I thought it was cool that Marcy's Playground are going to be there, and then also Sean from Harvey Danger will be there, and then
I think Sean's not coming now. He had a problem,
Okay.
so he's not going to be able to make it. But you know, the first one we did, I guess it was 2 festivals ago. The first one of our producers had sort of met the guys in Marcy Playground, and they came to play, and they just had such a great time. They loved it. They were great. They played a blistering set. And then the next time we had a festival, they came back and hung out at it. And they've just like really become a part of it in a way. They asked to come back and play this time, and we said, absolutely. I mean, you can't really buy enthusiasm. People that really want to be a part of something. And they just have been so forward about that. They just love the festival, and they love coming to hang out, and they were really good.
That's awesome.
They were great.
I heard you talking about, I believe, Underwater Sunshine, the album, and then also the 2014 record, and you described it as the your 2 most interactive albums, which I thought was an interesting term for, you know, studio recorded music. What did you mean by that they're the most interactive?
Did I just say that? Or?
No, I'm sorry. I
think I was watching. I mean, I said at one point maybe I was talking about the podcast on the record, maybe.
I don't know. I think that you were referring to, or maybe I misinterpreted, but maybe I thought you were referring to the recording of those records as being very interactive, and that struck me. I don't know if you.
Well, they were really, I mean, I think one of the nice things about having a record that I didn't write the songs on was that everybody took a little more ownership in the band of it, and it really, at a time when maybe we were getting a little lazy about the way everybody played, sort of showing up and expecting me to write their parts or come up with and tell them what to play. Everyone really took ownership of the songs on Underwater Sunshine, because maybe they weren't my songs and they felt more justified in just coming up with their own stuff. And I think it really reawakened the band, because I don't think we could have made an album like Somewhere Under Wonderland if we hadn't made Underwater Sunshine. The band was so much better by that time because of that record.
Do you ever feel pressure throughout the years of, like you just said, people looking to you for the direction of the songwriting? Because you've described yourself, you're not a terribly prolific writer. You will write 10 to 12 songs over a course of many years, and then those are kind of the 10 to 12 songs we get on the Crows record. Do you ever feel pressure to produce?
I guess. I mean, I need to do it all the time so we have work. And when I get tired of it and don't do it for a few years, we don't make records, which isn't good. You know, like I haven't written much the last few years. I went to England, shaved my head, and ended up going and staying out at my friend's farm for about a month, most of August over there, and I wrote a lot. I got a piano and just like an electric piano, and I just set it up in this room there. And for about half that time, I was completely alone on this farm in the middle of nowhere. There was no one around except for me and some dogs, and I wrote an EP's worth of songs, 4 or 5 now, that I think we're ready to record after New Year's. But it took that, like, I just wasn't writing.
Was that symbolic for you artistically, the shaving the head and just kind of distancing yourself for a little while from people?
I don't know. It was, I just got really tired of the dreads, and I got there, and I was thinking about doing it, and my girlfriend was asleep because she'd just gotten off a plane, and I just sort of went in the bathroom and started cutting it off my head, and she's like, do you want me to help you? And I started thinking about, what if I really regret this? I don't want to be mad at anyone for doing it. It should be my fault. I was like, no, just get some sleep. And I cut them all off and shaved it and took a shower and came back and went, she's like, wow, that actually looks kind of good. Then I walked outside the next morning and my head nearly froze off. I didn't realize that you need
had to feel so weird, right?
It was very strange, and it was London, so it was really cold.
Yeah.
And I wasn't prepared for what life was like without that stuff on my head.
Yeah.
So I nearly froze. I went and bought hats.
At the risk of a silly question, do you feel differently now when you're making art?
I don't know about when I'm making art. I haven't made a whole lot of it since I shaved my head. But I definitely feel different. I went to a football game out in California about, I don't know when it was, 3 or 4 weeks ago. It was right before I went to England again. I got back last night. And my friend Steve Kerr was with me, him and his wife, he's the coach of the Warriors. And so we were at the game, and, you know, in the Bay Area, it was in Berkeley, and, you know, he's an icon there right now. And everyone's like, and for the first week or two, I was like, yeah, it's really cool. You know, no one is coming up to me. No one is recognizing me, but it's kind of great. I just have never been this anonymous in 30 years almost. But at the game, I was watching Steve, and I thought, actually, this is a little humbling. You know, no one recognized me here. I went to college here at Berkeley. No one recognized me, and everyone recognizes Steve. I was a little jealous for a minute there.
Well, that must have been such a trip, because that's what kind of drove you out of Berkeley, for lack of a better term, right?
Yeah, at first, when I was
how recognizable you were. There'd be kids camping out on your front lawn in Berkeley, and then you moved to LA. So being back in that town, that had to be kind of funny.
It was weird, and I hadn't really been prepared for the kind of childish jealousy of it a little bit. You know, I was really not ready. You know, I've accomplished a lot in my life, but all of the stuff in my life that came about it, that I really like identify with, I had those things on my head at the same time, you know, and the stuff before that, I was kind of a bum or a kid, you know, not doing much. So you know, I wasn't sure, you know. Look, it's silly to think that your hair has anything to do with like making music, but you know, but I had no evidence to the contrary either. I've never made any music without that stuff on my head, really. So it was a little weird. You know, it definitely had a moment of, nah, don't worry about it. It's fine. You can shave your head. It doesn't have anything to do with anything.
Right.
But you never know.
No. In the oddest of ways, was it almost like a return to origins? In a certain way, did you feel like, you know, almost like pre-fame, Adam?
Not any origins. No, that guy was a total loser. I barely remember him. I just remember he didn't do much with his life.
Yeah.
The other guy, this guy, if I'm still that guy.
Yeah.
He's great. He's done all kinds of shit.
Right.
No, I don't know. I haven't the slightest idea what it's not a return to that. It's like it feels like a new thing. It mostly just feels like
that must be so awesome, though.
The best thing about it is you can just walk up to a sink and wash your hair.
Yeah. Yeah.
I do. I walk by the sink in the bathroom all the time, and I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to do it again. I stick my head into the sink, and I wash my hair, and then it's fantastically efficient.
Speaking of those Coca-Cola commercials, we have a shampoo commercial on the horizon.
Coming up in a day now, yeah. Yeah.
What's your relationship with some of these biggest hits? Because it seems that every artist I talk to, it's different. I know Edwin McCain comes to mind. Of course, you know, did I'll Be There in the 90s. And, you know, he kind of laughs at people that hate the biggest hits because it's basically almost like this lottery ticket. You know, I think he as he says it, walking by a lottery ticket that gave you this great life and just kind of like scowling at it, you know? Do you... What is your personal relationship with like a Mr. Jones or Around Here or a Big Yellow Taxi or?
Well, Around Here is always one of my favorite songs.
Yeah.
Mr. Jones, I love that too. But Around Here is really more what we were always about as a band. But the truth is, I like all the songs. It's just I don't want to have to play the same songs every night. My only problem with the hits is the concept that you have to play all of them every show. Because I have a lot of records, and I got a lot of songs I want to play. And the hits weren't really any better than any other song to me. They're just some song that was short enough to go on the radio for the most part, except for Around Here.
Right.
Which we sort of muscled on the radio by being really famous right then.
Yeah.
So they're not like any more important than another song on the record to me, and I want to play those other songs too. Like I really want to play Mr. Jones. But I want to play a lot of other stuff too, and part of where I think you get to resent those songs, sometimes they can take up your whole set list if you're not careful. You could play the same set. A lot of bands do play the same set list every night because that's what people want to hear. I just think I'd die of boredom.
Yeah.
Playing the same set list every night. So we try not to.
Right.
There are some songs I never get tired of playing. I could play Long December every night. I don't know why, but for some reason that never gets boring.
I mean, if you had to say why.
I don't know.
You don't know?
I just know that I don't think I've ever had a night where I didn't feel like playing it. Just for some reason.
The way it makes you feel? The way it makes the crowd feel?
I don't know. I always feel, well, the way it makes me feel is I feel like playing it every night. I couldn't say that about almost anything else.
Wow.
And nothing else gets played every night.
Huh.
You know, Mr. Jones certainly has had many nights off, Around Here too. But December gets played.
How do you, just as an artist, feel about the sentiment of, on the flip side of what you just said, a ticket buying fan, they want a certain thing out of the show and they paid their money and they want to hear the hit. Do you feel like the artist has an expectancy or no?
Well, I think you owe them a great show every night. I
That's
don't know
what
that you
they
owe
get.
them the songs or what they thought they wanted when they walked in. Because, life, and especially art on a live stage, should be about surprises. That's the whole point of going to see something live, is that you're not watching a video montage. You're watching a band play live. And so you should get real passion out of it. You should get, real skill and experimentation and creativity. I don't know that you necessarily should get a set list because, I think that's one thing that's changed now. We used to be a lot more interested in surprises because that was the only choice we had. The radio didn't play what you wanted. The great thing about Spotify is you can hear anything you want. The bad thing about Spotify is it's impossible to know that you want something you haven't heard yet.
Right.
And so if you're not careful, you're never going to hear it, anything new. That's why I think, I love Spotify for some things, and I like Pandora for others because they'll, surprise me more. That was the good thing about radio, which didn't always have a lot of good things about it. But I think that should be true of a concert, too. People went to see things live because they had no concept of what it was to even see a band. And so what happened at the concert was what they came to expect. I think MTV, in showing us videos that looked like what live performance was, we saw bands playing the songs we loved, changed our perspective of what a concert was supposed to be. Because then it was after MTV, it was supposed to be suddenly a recreation of what they did before. I don't think people went to concerts before and were bummed out because someone changed their songs. Right. I think they were probably excited by that because that's what concerts were.
Yeah.
Now I think it's a lot different. People don't necessarily want you to change the song. They want to hear it, like to hear it, because that's what they've come to expect. But I don't know that I owe people to fulfill expectations. I'd like to surprise them.
Yeah. You owe them a great show, as you said. I like that.
I think we owe them a great show. I think you do owe them a really great show every night. Which is why you shouldn't pay too much attention to the audience because, the only people you can see in the audience anyways are the first few rows. So what if you have first few rows who are complete douchebags and are hating the show? There's 10,000 people behind them that you can't see. Are you going to, put on a crap show because some guy in the front is an idiot? That's why spending too much time looking at the audience and figuring stuff out from the audience, it can lead you into some bad habits. Yeah.
Are you someone that keeps up to date with popular mainstream music?
I keep up to date with a lot of new music.
Well,
I don't know how much it's the popular music all the time. I have Bruno Mars records. I have follow things. That's not even that new anymore.
Right.
I follow a lot of music. I don't know if it's the mainstream. You hear it on the radio no matter what, though.
Right. I'm just curious if you had any thoughts because you kind of alluded to the issues with Spotify, and it's something I've talked about on this show with songwriters even, where the algorithm, right, and how it rewards you sounding like other groups, right? Because you'll get suggested, oh, well, if you like Ed Sheeran, you ought to like this guy, right? So you have almost a generation of songwriters, especially in LA now, that do these songwriting camps trying to sound like whatever's popular, which I think is probably in stark contrast to what it was like in Berkeley in the early 90s, where you were trying to do something different. A lot of times you would get signed for being different.
Well, and it's also a problem with... I think there's always been a culture of sound like the last thing that was successful. That doesn't necessarily make for great music, but there's always been a culture of following that track, But, that doesn't necessarily mean that that's what we all wanted to hear. But, look, Nirvana was an incredible band. They were unbelievable. I don't think that every band that came after them with a flannel shirt and Doc Martens necessarily was. Of course. A lot of those bands were pretty mediocre.
Yeah.
But Nirvana, man, that was incredible.
Right.
And I think that's always true. There's some people are great, some people follow.
Yeah.
But I don't know, for me, it's like, you just kind of want to do your own thing.
Yeah.
But I still listen to lots of music, so it certainly affects my music.
Well, totally.
I just don't know if it's the mainstream as much because I would love all these music to get into the mainstream. That would be really cool.
Yeah.
But that's kind of what the festival's for in a way. It's trying to. But that I had independent record companies of my own early in my career. I had 2 different companies, and I was really proud of all the music we made. But it was really hard work, and selling records is, especially at that point, kind of a losing bet. So it always felt like failure. The festival never feels like that. It's always like you just know you've done something great every time, and there's no bar that says if you didn't sell this many, you actually didn't do great. We made great records on my record companies. We didn't sell many at all. the festival doesn't have a thing that says, by this measure, you suck. I guess if we had empty houses, that would be that. But,
Yeah.
but that hasn't happened yet either. You know?
But that is what's nice about it, is you've almost removed commerce from the conversation here, which is nice.
Yeah, I mean, well, we hope that it brings it to the bands. You know, I would love to see, Scout, for instance, become well-known and successful because they're really good.
Oh, yeah.
But the thing is, there's always been lots and lots and lots of really good music. I don't think I like independent music necessarily because it's independent. I think it's just that there is lots and lots of good music, and most of it just doesn't get heard because it's hard to get heard.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, and also you find with independent music, it's not music that is with the intent to be liked. I think great art you shouldn't create art or attempt to make great art so that people like it. You're expressing it. It's something you have to get out, right?
But I think it would make all their lives easier if people did.
Well,
like
yes,
it more.
of course. Yeah, that does
It would
help.
make all of our lives easier if everybody liked stuff that was really good all the time.
Totally. Let's kick it to Twitter really quick. This comes from @OakCitySongs. Adam, who are you most looking forward to at Underwater Sunshine? Which is a tough question, but maybe give us a couple bands.
God, I mean, there's so many. I'm always happy to see Maria Taylor play because I've just been a fan of hers for years. She played a couple festivals ago and was incredible, and I actually sang on her record this year. So I'm really proud of that. And my friend Sean Barna as well is really good. Matt Susich is a New York songwriter who's like a modern Paul Simon to me. He's just such a great New York writer. And Stu is playing again, Stu and the Negro Problem, and he may be my favorite songwriter ever, of all time. He's just, I've loved him for I don't know how long, and we've been friends for a long time. He eventually had a lot of success, went to Broadway with his play Passing Strange that he wrote, and Spike Lee made a movie of it, and I think he's absolutely incredible. I'm really looking forward to seeing Blackalack. I'm hoping they can still make it. That's a band from Austin, a hip-hop band with Zeely, and Gary Carter Jr. plays in it sometimes, although I don't think he's playing this week. And they were having some trouble maybe getting up here, but I'd love to see them. Fair Hazel is a band from Britain that played the last festival and was incredible. There are two bands, Fair Hazel and Jordan Klassen, who's a songwriter from Vancouver, who both came and played on the small stage last time, and we all were floored, and we wanted to have them back to play on a bigger stage. So they're both coming back for this festival and playing larger stages this time.
Do you ever like to hop up as like a surprise, or just if you're feeling it, or do you like to kind of remove yourself as a performer, just enjoy the show?
I have done it. I used to play a lot of them. I would love to make the festival exist as much as possible without me on stage.
Totally.
Then I can just do it when I feel like it.
Right.
But I've sung on, I've been done background vocals for a lot of music in the last few years, but almost all of it was friends from this festival community.
Yeah.
So there is plenty of material for me to sing on now, where it's actually me on the record. But I kind of, well, the other thing is I really want to be there for every set, and so it's hard for me to do that and then commit to playing too, because I don't want to be, miss the band. The next band. I don't know, but I do try and be there for every band.
Totally. We have some great questions from here in the audience in New York City. The first is going to come from over here, first front row.
Hello.
I like the hat.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
What message do you want the Underwater Sunshine Fest to spread to its attendees? How do you want them to feel after leaving the venue?
I'd like them to feel like they just stumbled on their new favorite band. That's not us. I would like them to discover, the same way I did, that there's so much great music out there, and these bands they're worth listening to, they're worth following, they're worth going to see them play, they're worth buying their records. They're just worth paying attention to, and there's a lot of it out there. I'd like it if people just got more exploratory about music. I mean, the way I find bands for the festival is I go to Audio Tree and I watch as many sessions as I can, or Wild Honey Pie is the one that's done in New York, and I watch all those, and I'm going to start doing more paced sessions just because there's so much music out there. It's hard to discover it without finding ways to get to see a lot of it in a day. I mean, try and go to clubs and see bands too, but the easiest way is to get one of these, there's all these sites now that have these performances by bands where you get 3, 4, 5 songs live in the studio, and they film them and they record them. And I mean, it's like candy for a music geek. Today is a good day to mention that. It's like Halloween for a music geek. You can just pick. It's like the day afterwards when you get really sick. I'd like people to do that. I wish people went to, every time I figure out there's another one of these sites where there's just 5 billion free sessions by bands that you can go watch, I just flip out, and I end up, there all day, geeking out, and I don't know. It's kind of what the podcast is for too. It's because I'm going to be a geek all day for one reason or another, and these are just ways to express that. Whether it's sitting on Audio Tree or Paste or Wild Honey Pie all day watching sessions, and then writing to the bands and getting them on the show. Or, we did this Woodstock series on the podcast a little while ago.
99 or?
No, about the original Woodstock.
Okay.
It's the 50th anniversary, and so my partner, James Campion, said, I really want to do a Woodstock podcast, really focus on Woodstock. And I groaned, like audibly groaned, because I've never been a fan of Woodstock. But I get it. It's 50 years. It's historic. So I started. I found this collection that had like a 10 CD collection that had all this music from Woodstock. And then
From 69.
Yeah,
okay.
And then I went online and I was finding sites to download other sets where you couldn't find them. And I listened to, days and days of music and research. And there's lots of great stuff at Woodstock, but there's a lot of crap too, because they ran 10 hours behind every day, and everyone's doing heroin and taking acid. And when you're 10 hours behind, that gives you a lot of time to get wasted, sober up, get wasted, have a hangover, get wasted again, and then play really badly.
Yeah.
And then play brilliantly too. But doing a podcast on it, we did 6 weeks, I think, on Woodstock. And I had to go through so much garbage.
But isn't that anything in history? Isn't it funny where, like, you were talking about Nirvana, right? Where, like, we all remember Nirvana, and then we remember grunge as this, like, great thing, but there's so much bad music with respect to some of those artists that exist within these things that we just kind of look back on with rose-colored glasses.
Well, it's just that it was all focused in one festival where people spent this entire weekend just getting blasted out of their minds on drugs that are way too heavy for most of us to survive and then play a coherent set of music.
Yeah.
I went through the entire Grateful Dead set. They broke Woodstock. They short-circuited the entire stage. They broke the stage that was supposed to revolve. They did more acid than any of us could probably survive doing. And then they played some really great stuff and some really bad stuff. Like, there's a 40-minute version of Turn On Your Love Light, I think. I listened to it. I played the 20-minute version of Dark Star because I listened to it 2 or 3 times and I realized, this is actually really great. And if you're going to do a podcast about Woodstock and you're going to talk about the Grateful Dead, this is actually what made the Grateful Dead great. Right. But I had to go through this 20-minute piece of music 3 times to make that decision. It was just like, I was so glad when we were done with Woodstock and we could move on to playing some other stuff again. Right. Playing some new music that happened recently. I found really great stuff at Woodstock. Yeah. And I did a ton of research reading about it. But really, this is like a 3-day affair where people just took more drugs than you can possibly imagine.
What are your personal memories of 99 when you guys performed?
Worse than that. It was, well, there were just a lot. It wasn't very well run. What happened in the end in 99 was probably what I would have expected to happen. They tried to burn the place down.
Did you feel it building? You were there, I think, on day 2.
Yeah, but I was there the night before, too. I watched them shut the power off at P-Funk. I went out early to see P-Funk the night before, and I watched one of the guys from P-Funk who'd gone to find his kid, and so had missed the van with the rest of the band, be unable to get a ride out to the stage for the longest time while these VIPs got rides out, like record company guys and radio guys. And then I remember watching Sheryl Crow play and seeing this woman nearly raped on the shoulders of her boyfriend, or, having her clothes torn off. It was badly run. It was 100 degrees outside on like tarmac, and water's like $6 for a little bottle of water. And people were pissed. They didn't change the porta potties. I remember that finally the crowd got so angry they knocked them over. In the middle of the second day, there was just this 200-yard wide lake of piss and shit. Yeah. Just, you could see it off to the left side of the stage, this big glistening lake of not good things, because it's on concrete. There shouldn't really be a lake there.
Right.
I think people were pretty pissed off, and they were getting treated poorly, and they weren't acting very well themselves. Like, it was triage in front of the stage, just body after body coming over the fence and being taken away on stretchers during our whole set. You're watching this. We had a great set there, but watching it, I remember thinking, this is just getting worse and worse.
Was that your hardest set to get through in your career?
No. We played great that day. We had a great set. But, like I said, you don't want to spend too much time on the audience, but some of the stuff going on out there was crazy.
Yeah.
I remember a little later on that afternoon, it went really wild during Limp Bizkit's set.
Were you there for that?
Yeah, I was watching. We were still there. I just thought that it was run really cynically, really poorly for a money-making thing, and
they're sort of marketed irresponsibly, right? I mean, they marketed that as almost like, you know, with the Limp Bizkits and the Kid Rocks and that new metal moment.
We wanted to play a night set, and we were told, no, we want the most aggro bands. I remember the conversation on the phone. I was listening in on my managers talking to the organizers and saying, like, no, we've scheduled it. We want the aggro bands playing every night, the most aggro bands every night. So we had, like, Near Sunset. But, you know, they set it up for those bands to play. Last 2 or 3 bands of the night, every night, were, like, the hardest kind of new metal bands. And then they acted surprised and blamed the bands when the crowd went crazy.
Right.
I don't think that's really fair.
Yeah.
I don't think it's fair to blame Limp Bizkit for just playing their set. You've set up a day where everyone got really pissed off. You know?
Yeah.
You know, at least change the porta potties.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
Like, there's simple decency. You know?
Yeah.
No one needs a lake of shit.
What is cool, and we'll end here, is if I'm not mistaken, I remember during your set at Woodstock 99, brought out a newer band, an up-and-coming band that I think was going to be on this Desert Life, maybe. Do you remember this?
Oh, was it the Gigolo Ants came out with us? I'm not sure. I don't remember.
I think it was like a Berkeley band, but I think it's cool that it's proof that you've always kind of been about shining light here on newer acts, which is nice. So
I don't really remember that.
it's on YouTube, I assure you. November 8th and 9th, Rockwood Music Hall. It's free, so if you're in the area, or even if you're not in the area, make the trip. It's going to be really cool. And Adam, thank you so much for one more time. Adam Duritz, everybody. Happy Halloween.